The night is deep and full of secrets. As the world sleeps, turning away from the concerns of the day, another world awakens. This is a world not of light and certainty, but of shadow and suggestion. It is a world that exists in the hushed whispers of ancient corridors, in the coded symbols hidden in plain sight upon the monuments of power, and in the silent, relentless struggle between two of history's most enduring and enigmatic forces. This is the story of a war fought not with armies and artillery, but with ideas, with faith, with secrets, and with symbols. This is the eternal war in the shadows, between the spiritual fortress of the Vatican and the elusive architects of a new world order, the Illuminati. To understand this conflict, one must first set aside the notion of a simple battle between good and evil. The reality is far more complex, woven from threads of history, philosophy, and the unyielding human quest for meaning and control. On one side stands the Vatican, the heart of the Roman Catholic Church, an institution that has weathered to millennia of human history. Its foundations are laid in the bedrock of apostolic succession, divine revelation, and the promise of eternal salvation. It is a kingdom of the Spirit, its authority descending from heaven, its dominion over the souls of millions, its power expressed in sacred ritual, immense art, and an unshakable dogma that has guided empires and inspired saints. The Vatican is order, tradition, and the light of a singular truth, a beacon in what it has often seen as a chaotic and sinful world. And arrayed against this ancient citadel of faith is a concept, a name that has come to represent the very essence of hidden power, the Illuminati. The word itself means the enlightened ones. It conjures images of clandestine meetings in candlelit rooms, of brilliant minds plotting the course of human history from behind a veil of secrecy. Its roots are tangled in the soil of the Enlightenment, a time when human reason was elevated to the highest principle, challenging the very foundations of religious and monarchical authority. The original order of the Illuminati, founded in the heart of 18th century Bavaria by Adam Weishaupt, was a product of this age. It was a secret society with radical ambitions to liberate humanity from the shackles of superstition and tyranny, to promote intellectual freedom, and to establish a new global order based on reason and secular morality. But the story does not end with the suppression of that small Bavarian order, for the idea of the Illuminati proved far more resilient than the organization itself. It was a seed that fell into the fertile ground of conspiracy and fear. Over the centuries, the name Illuminati has been grafted onto other secretive groups, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, powerful banking dynasties, and shadowy globalist cabals. In the modern imagination, it has transformed into a hydra-headed entity, an invisible network of unparalleled influence, pulling the strings of governments, financial markets, and cultural trends, steering humanity toward an unknown and often ominous destiny. This, then, is the stage for our story. It is a conflict that spans centuries, a cold war of ideologies fought in the grand theaters of history and the silent chambers of the human heart. It is the war between the light from above, the divine light of faith and revelation championed by the Church, and the light from within, the inner light of human reason and potential, championed by the heirs of the Enlightenment. One seeks to save humanity by guiding it toward God. The other seeks to save humanity by liberating it from God. As we embark on this long and winding journey through the annals of this secret war, we will trace its origins from the dusty streets of ancient Rome and the scholarly debates of Enlightenment Europe. We will witness the rise of the Church to temporal power and the birth of its most determined ideological adversary. We will explore the key battles of this shadow war, the infiltration of secret societies, the theft of ancient knowledge, the propaganda campaigns waged through art and architecture, and the silent, patient work of agents embedded within the very structures of each other's power. We will meet popes who were warriors and statesmen, and illuminists who were philosophers and revolutionaries. We will see how this conflict shaped the course of revolutions, the founding of nations, and the very fabric of our modern world. So, let us begin at the beginning, not with the birth of the Illuminati, but with the rise of the institution it would come to challenge. Let us travel back through the mists of time to the heart of the Roman Empire, where a new faith was taking root in the catacombs. A faith that would one day build its throne upon the hill of the Vatican and cast a long shadow across all of human history. Close your eyes and let the weight of the years settle upon you. Listen to the whispers of the past, for they tell the story of a war that is still being fought, a war in the shadows. Our story begins not in the halls of power, but in the catacombs, in the humble meeting places of a persecuted sect. The early followers of Christ were a scattered and often hunted community within the vast expanse of the Roman Empire. They preached a message that was radically subversive, of a kingdom not of this world, of a God who had sacrificed himself for humanity, and of a salvation available to all, slave and emperor alike. This spiritual revolution, born in the eastern provinces of the empire, slowly and inexorably began its westward march toward the very heart of temporal power, the city of Rome itself. According to sacred tradition, it was the Apostle Peter, the rock upon whom Christ promised to build his church, who first brought this new faith to the capital of the world. His ministry there, and his eventual martyrdom upside down on a cross on the Vatican hill, planted a seed of immense spiritual significance. That blood-soaked ground, just outside the Circus of Nero, became the most hallowed site in Christendom. A small shrine was erected, then a basilica, and over centuries, the magnificent St. Peter's Basilica we know today. But this physical growth was mirrored by an organizational one. The Bishop of Rome, drawing authority from the Petrine legacy, gradually began to assert primacy over the other great centers of Christianity. In Antioch, Alexandria, Constantinople, and Jerusalem, the conversion of Emperor Constantine in the 4th century was the pivotal moment that transformed Christianity from a persecuted faith into the official religion of the empire. In a single stroke, the faith of the catacombs was invited into the palace. The church, once a separate and often illegal entity, now became intertwined with the state. This union brought immense power, wealth, and influence, but it also brought the temptations and corruptions of worldly power. The Bishop of Rome was now a prince of the church and a player in the political games of empires. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled under the weight of barbarian invasions, the papacy stood firm, a rock of stability in a sea of chaos. It was the church that negotiated with Attila the Hun, that provided administration where civil government had collapsed, and that began the long work of converting the pagan tribes of Europe. Through the Dark Ages, the Vatican, through the person of the Pope, became the centralizing force of Western civilization. Monks in secluded monasteries painstakingly copied not only scripture but the classical texts of antiquity. Preserving the flame of knowledge, missionaries fanned out across the continent, from the British Isles to the forests of Germany, bringing not just a new religion, but a new culture, a new way of organizing society, and a direct link back to the authority of Rome. The coronation of Charlemagne as Holy Roman Emperor by Pope Leo III in the year 800 cemented this relationship. It symbolized a divine partnership, the spiritual power of the Pope sanctioning the temporal power of the Emperor. The Church now held the keys to not only the kingdom of heaven, but also to the legitimacy of earthly rulers. This vast edifice of influence, this spiritual empire, was built upon a foundation of absolute truth. The Church was the sole arbiter of doctrine, the only interpreter of God's will. Its hierarchy, descending from the Pope to the lowliest parish priest, was a perfect reflection of the divine order, a great chain of being reaching from heaven to earth. Its rituals, conducted in a sacred language, Latin, inaccessible to the common person, were mysteries that only its ordained ministers could perform. Its cathedrals, reaching for the skies, were stone and glass, testaments to its glory and its role as the indispensable intermediary between humanity and God. For 1,000 years, this vision held sway over the mind of Europe. The Vatican was not just a city-state, it was the very center of the known universe, the axis mundi around which all of creation turned. But no empire, whether of land or of the spirit, can last forever without facing a challenge. And the greatest challenges often come not from without, but from within, from new ideas that stir in the hearts and minds of men. Ideas that would one day coalesce into a force that would dare to envision a world without the need for this ancient, towering institution. The light of reason was beginning to kindle, a small, flickering flame at first, but one that would grow until it threatened to illuminate the very shadows in which the Church had built its throne. For centuries, the universe, as understood by the world, overseen by the Vatican, was a known quantity. It was a grand, hierarchical creation, with God and his celestial hosts at the apex, the Pope and the Church as his regents on earth, and humanity dwelling in a fixed and orderly world at the center of it all. This was a comforting, if rigid, cosmology, but slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, cracks began to appear in this magnificent edifice. The first signs of a profound shift did not emerge from the pulpits of churches or the halls of papal palaces, but from the quiet studies of scholars and the observations of curious men gazing at the heavens. This was the dawn of the Renaissance, a rebirth of art, science, and classical learning that began to sweep through Italy and then across Europe. It was an age that rediscovered the wisdom of ancient Greece and Rome, philosophies that celebrated human potential and the power of reason. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo studied the human form with a scientific eye, seeing in it not just a vessel of sin, but a thing of divine beauty and intricate mechanics. Their work shifted the focus from a purely divine narrative to the human experience within that narrative. This human-centric view, this humanism, was not inherently anti-church, but it planted a seed of intellectual independence. It suggested that humanity, through its own intellect and creativity, could understand and even improve its world. Then came the cosmological revolution, a shock to the very foundations of the medieval mind. Nicolaus Copernicus, a Polish canon and mathematician, proposed a heliocentric model of the universe, displacing the Earth from its central position. This was more than a scientific adjustment. It was a theological earthquake. If Earth was not the center of God's creation, then what was humanity's special place? The Church, guardian of a geocentric truth, initially tolerated this as a mere mathematical hypothesis. But the evidence mounted. Galileo Galilei, peering through his telescope, saw moons orbiting Jupiter and the phases of Venus, providing compelling visual proof that the heavens did not revolve around the Earth. His subsequent condemnation by the Roman Inquisition in 1633 was a pivotal moment. It was the clear, public declaration of a conflict between two ways of knowing, one based on divine revelation and ancient authority, and the other on empirical observation and human reason. The Church had drawn a line in the sand, but the tide of new knowledge was relentless. This intellectual ferment was accompanied by a spiritual and political upheaval. The Protestant Reformation, ignited by Martin Luther in 1517, shattered the unity of Christendom. For the first time in a millennium, the absolute authority of the Pope was successfully and violently challenged. The Reformation was born from within the Church itself, a critique of its corruption and its claim to be the sole path to salvation. It championed the idea of a personal relationship with God, unmediated by a priestly hierarchy. The resulting wars of religion tore Europe apart for over a century, leaving millions dead and the continent deeply scarred. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648, which ended much of the fighting, established the principle of state sovereignty and religious tolerance, further eroding the Vatican's direct political influence over European monarchs. It was in this world where the old certainties of faith were being challenged by science and fractured by religious schism that the soil became perfectly prepared for a new kind of seed. The Enlightenment was born from the ashes of religious warfare. Thinkers like John Locke, Voltaire, and Montesquieu began to articulate a new vision for society. They argued that natural law and reason, not divine right or papal decree, should be the basis of government and human relations. They championed individual liberty, freedom of thought, and the separation of church and state. They saw organized religion, particularly the powerful and dogmatic Catholic Church, as a primary source of intolerance, superstition, and oppression. The enemy of this new, enlightened age was not God, but the institutions that claimed to speak for him. This was the cultural and intellectual crucible. The Vatican, though wounded by the Reformation and challenged by new sciences, remained a colossal force, a global institution of immense wealth and deep-rooted influence. But arrayed against it now was not a rival theological interpretation, but an entirely new worldview. It was a worldview that sought to build a heaven here on earth, not in the afterlife, a heaven built by human hands and guided by human reason. And it was from within this fervent, optimistic, and revolutionary atmosphere that a man would emerge with a bold plan to accelerate this new dawn. His name was Adam Weishaupt, and his creation on the 1st of May, 1776, would be a secret society dedicated to this very cause, the Order of the Illuminati. In the heart of the 18th century, in the deeply Catholic and conservative state of Bavaria, a young professor of canon law named Adam Weishaupt felt the stifling weight of the old order. He was a man of the Enlightenment, his mind ablaze with the new philosophies sweeping in from France and Britain. He looked around him and saw a society dominated by the Jesuits, whom he viewed as the intellectual enforcers of superstition and obedience. He dreamed of a world liberated from the tyranny of religious dogma and the despotism of monarchs, a world where reason would be the supreme guide and human beings could achieve their full, perfectible potential. But he knew that such ideas could not be preached openly in the streets of Ingolstadt. They had to be planted in secret, to grow in the dark until they were strong enough to bear the light of day. And so, on the 1st of May, 1776, he founded the Order of the Perfectibilists, which would soon become known by a more luminous name, the Illuminati. Weishaupt's vision was grand and meticulous. The Illuminati was not to be a mere debating society or a social club. It was to be a secret army of the enlightened, a human machine engineered to gradually and invisibly reshape society from within. Its structure was hierarchical and cellular, modeled in part on the very organization Weishaupt sought to undermine, the Jesuit order. New members, known as novices, were initiated into the lowest grades. They were carefully observed and tested. They were taught the arts of secrecy, of observing human character, of controlling their passions. They learned to see the world not as it was presented to them, but as a system of power and influence that could be analyzed and, ultimately, redirected. As a member proved his loyalty and intellectual commitment, he would ascend through the order's grades: Beneval, Illuminatus Minor, Illuminatus Major, and eventually the highest ranks of the priesthood and regents. With each promotion, more of the order's true goals were revealed. The lower grades were taught a philosophy of moral improvement and rational thought, often framed in a language that was not overtly anti-religious. But the inner core understood the radical mission to abolish all monarchy and all state religion, to overthrow the oppressive structures of the past, and to establish a new world order of reason, equality, and secular virtue. Recruitment focused on the bright, the ambitious, and the well-connected. University students, progressive nobles, doctors, lawyers, and even some clergymen were ideal targets. The Illuminati sought to place its members in positions of influence in government ministries, university faculties, and the courts of princes. Their method was infiltration and subtle influence. They were to guide policy, shape public opinion, and mentor the next generation of leaders, all while maintaining absolute secrecy about their true allegiance. They communicated through ciphers and pseudonyms. Weishaupt himself was known as Spartacus. Their network expanded with remarkable speed, spreading from Bavaria into Austria and across the German states. A significant boost to the order's sophistication came with the recruitment of Baron Adolf von Kinneger, a Freemason of high rank and considerable organizational talent. It was Clifford who helped refine the Illuminati's complex system of grades and rituals, many of which were borrowed from Freemasonry, to give the order a familiar and appealing mystique. For a brief, brilliant moment, the Illuminati seemed to be on the cusp of becoming a genuine force for change, a shadowy senate of the enlightened guiding Europe toward a brighter future. Their influence was felt not as a public movement, but as a subtle current beneath the surface of society, a whispered conversation among powerful men who believed they held the key to human progress. But the very secrecy that was their greatest strength would also become the source of their downfall. For in the shadows, they had attracted the attention of another power, one that had centuries of experience in detecting and extinguishing threats to its dominion. The Vatican and the temporal rulers it influenced were beginning to wake up to the danger. The war in the shadows was about to enter its first open confrontation. The meteoric rise of the Illuminati could not proceed forever in the dark. Like any secret, it was vulnerable to a single moment of exposure, a single loose thread that, when pulled, could unravel the entire tapestry. That moment arrived, not with a grand proclamation, but with a simple act of nature and a zealous ruler's suspicion. In 1784, a dedicated Illuminati courier, a man tasked with carrying sensitive messages between members, was struck by lightning and killed in the town of Regensburg. The sudden and dramatic nature of his death meant his documents were not destroyed. They fell into the hands of the local authorities, and soon, onto the desk of the Elector of Bavaria, Karl Theodor. The seized papers were a treasure trove of secrets. They contained lists of members, detailed correspondence outlining the order's subversive goals, its methods of infiltration, and its deep antipathy toward the church and the state. For Karl Theodor, a conservative ruler whose power was rooted in the divine right of kings and a close alliance with the Catholic Church, this was not a philosophical debate. It was a conspiracy against his very throne. He saw the Illuminati for what they were, a secret society dedicated to the overthrow of the existing order. In June of 1784, he issued the first of a series of edicts, banning all secret societies not officially authorized by the state, a decree aimed squarely at Weishaupt's order. The crackdown was swift and severe. Weishaupt, forewarned, fled Bavaria in disgrace, losing his prestigious university position. Other prominent members were arrested, their homes searched, and their private correspondence confiscated. The Bavarian government took the unprecedented step of publishing many of these seized documents, exposing the inner workings of the Illuminati to the public for the first time. The reaction was a mixture of shock and fascination. The public learned of the order's grand ambitions, its secret codes, its plans to manipulate governments and control education. To the average person, it confirmed their deepest fears of a hidden cabal plotting in the shadows. Officially, the order of the Illuminati was shattered, its network dismantled, its leaders scattered to the winds. Its existence as a formal, organized entity lasted less than a decade, but in its dramatic suppression, something far more powerful and enduring was born. The legend of the Illuminati, the very act of exposing and banning the group, transformed it from a historical reality into a mythological force. The published documents provided a ready-made blueprint for conspiracy. If the Illuminati had been so effective at hiding, who was to say they had truly disappeared? Perhaps they had simply gone deeper underground. Perhaps the public crackdown was itself a ruse, a way for the order to shed its known members and continue its work in an even more secretive form. This was the seed that fell on fertile ground. The idea of the Illuminati was immediately grafted onto the larger, more established, and more international network of Freemasonry. Though many Masons were hostile to the Illuminati and their methods, the lines blurred in the public imagination. Freemasonry's own secrecy, its strange rituals, and its gatherings of influential men made it the perfect vessel for the Illuminati myth. The French Revolution, which erupted just a few years after the Bavarian crackdown in 1789, provided the perfect catalyst for those who feared the forces of revolution. The monarchs, the aristocrats, and the church. The chaos seemed too coordinated, too ideologically driven to be a mere popular uprising. They needed an explanation, a hidden hand guiding the guillotine. The writings of French Jesuit priest Augustin Barruel and Scottish physicist John Robison provided it. They wove a compelling narrative that the Illuminati, having infiltrated the Masonic lodges of Europe, had engineered the entire revolution as part of their long-term plan to destroy Christianity and overthrow all thrones. And so, the physical war was over, but the psychological war had just begun. The Vatican, which had watched the rise of Enlightenment thought and secret societies with growing alarm, now had a name for its enemy. The Illuminati became the archetypal enemy of the Church, a symbol of the modern, secular, and anti-clerical forces that sought to build a world without God. The Church's vast intellectual and diplomatic machinery began to work in opposition to this perceived threat, condemning Freemasonry and all secret societies that plotted against the Church and the established social order. The Bavarian Illuminati was dead, but its spectre was now immortal. A ghost that would haunt the corridors of power for centuries to come, a name that would be whispered whenever unexplained events shifted the course of history. The war was no longer confined to Bavaria. It had expanded to encompass the entire future of civilization. The 19th century dawned on a Europe forever changed. The old order, though wounded, had survived the revolutionary storm, but it was a continent now haunted by the ghost of the Illuminati. The formal order was gone, but the concept had taken root in the collective unconscious of both the powerful and the paranoid. It became a convenient, all-purpose explanation for any event that challenged the status quo. For the Vatican and the remaining monarchies, the Illuminati was the hidden puppet master behind every liberal revolt, every call for constitutional reform, every critique of clerical privilege. This century would see the shadow war evolve from a hunt for a specific organization into a sprawling global struggle between the forces of tradition and the forces of revolution, with the idea of the Illuminati serving as a central, if often invisible, protagonist. In the wake of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars, the great powers of Europe sought to roll back the clock. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 was their attempt to stitch the old fabric of monarchy and divine right back together. The Vatican, restored to its temporal powers, was a fervent supporter of this new old order. Pope Pius VII and his successors saw themselves as besieged defenders of Christendom. They issued encyclicals and condemnations against the sects they believed were conspiring to destroy the Church. While these documents often spoke broadly of secret societies, the spectre of the Illuminati always loomed largest. It was the original model, the blueprint for a godless conspiracy. The Church's diplomatic corps and its network of loyal Catholic monarchs worked to suppress Masonic lodges and other suspect groups, seeing them as branches of the same poisonous tree planted by. But the ideas the Illuminati had championed, republicanism, secularism, rationalism, refused to die. They fueled the fires of revolution that flared up repeatedly across the continent in 1830 and again in 1848. These were the springtime of the peoples, widespread upheavals where citizens demanded constitutions, national unification, and freedom from imperial rule. From the perspective of the Vatican and its allies, this was not a series of spontaneous, organic movements. This was the work of the hidden network, the enduring Illuminati conspiracy, executing its plan in wave after wave. When Giuseppe Mazzini and Giuseppe Garibaldi fought to unify Italy, threatening the papal states themselves, the Vatican saw not patriots, but the instruments of a secret society's anti-clerical agenda. The very existence of the papacy as a temporal ruler was under direct assault, and the blame was laid at the feet of the enlightened, secularist shadow army. It was during this century that the symbolism of the war became more pronounced and more public, as the Vatican under Pope Pius IX codified the doctrine of papal infallibility in 1870, asserting its ultimate spiritual authority in the face of a modernizing world. It also lost the last of its temporal lands to the new Kingdom of Italy. The Church, now a spiritual power confined to the Vatican walls, framed its struggle in stark, symbolic terms. It was the city of God against the city of man, the light of faith against the darkness of unbelief. And on the other side, the symbols that would later be so strongly associated with the Illuminati began to appear in the architecture of the new secular states. The most famous of these is the Great Seal of the United States, adopted in 1782, but which gained prominence in the 19th century. The pyramid with the all-seeing eye, the Latin motto Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order of the ages, seemed to many to be a blatant, almost arrogant, proclamation of the Illuminati's ultimate goal. How could a new nation, founded on Enlightenment principles, use such imagery, if not as a signal to its fellow initiates? Similarly, the Statue of Liberty, a gift from the Masonic-led French Third Republic, holding aloft the torch of Enlightenment, was seen by some as a symbol of this new, secular religion meant to replace the cross. The war was no longer just about secret meetings and infiltrated institutions. It was a war of symbols, fought on the very buildings and currencies of nations. It was a battle for the soul of modernity. Would the future be built upon the ancient foundations of faith and tradition, guarded by the Vatican? Or would it be constructed according to a blueprint of reason and secular power, designed by the unseen heirs of the Illuminati? As the 19th century drew to a close, this conflict was about to enter a new, even more shadowy phase, moving from the salons of Europe to the boardrooms of a rising global power, where vast fortunes would be made, and a new kind of influence, financial influence, would become the ultimate weapon in the war in the shadows. The 20th century arrived with the roar of industry and the tremors of impending war. It was an era of unprecedented scale, of global conflicts and ideological battles that would dwarf the conspiracies of the previous century. And as the world grew more complex, so too did the myth of the Illuminati. It underwent a profound metamorphosis, transforming from a secret society of enlightened philosophers into a shadowy network of unparalleled financial and political power, a hidden hand guiding the destiny of nations. The war in the shadows moved from the Masonic lodges of Europe to the corridors of international finance and the birth of a new, explicitly anti-clerical empire, the Soviet Union. The rise of international banking dynasties, particularly the House of Rothschild, provided a new and potent fuel for the conspiracy narrative. Their vast cross-border wealth and their ability to fund governments and wars seemed to represent a form of power that rivaled, and perhaps even superseded, that of the Vatican and the old aristocracy. To conspiracists, these bankers were the new Illuminati. Their religion was not reason, but capital. Their goal was not a republic of virtue, but a global system of economic control. The establishment of the United States Federal Reserve in 1913 was seen by some as a crowning achievement of this financial Kabbalah move to place the control of a nation's money supply into private and arguably secretive hands. From the Vatican's perspective, this new godless power of international finance was a dire threat, a force that could undermine Christian nations and their moral foundations more effectively than any philosophical treatise. Then came the thunderclap of the Russian Revolution in 1917. For the Vatican, the rise of Bolshevism was the ultimate realization of the Illuminati's nightmare vision. Here was a state officially founded on atheistic principles, explicitly dedicated to the eradication of religion, and particularly hostile to the Catholic Church. The persecution of Christians, the desecration of churches, and the state-sponsored propaganda against religion was seen not as a novel political development, but as the logical, violent culmination of the Enlightenment's anti-clerical streak that Weishaupt had championed. The fact that some revolutionary figures had Masonic connections or were influenced by secular ideologies only cemented this belief. The Cold War, which would define the latter half of the century, was, from this shadow war perspective, merely the latest front in the ancient conflict. On one side, the Vatican, championing the rights of the faithful behind the Iron Curtain and warning the world of the godless communist menace. On the other, a global communist movement that seemed to be the Illuminatized heir, seeking a new world order through revolution and state control. It was in the crucible of these world wars and ideological struggles that the most enduring modern Illuminati narrative was forged. The concept of a plot to establish a new world order. This phrase, used by politicians and thinkers of various stripes, was imbued with a sinister meaning in conspiracy lore. It became the ultimate goal, the final stage of the centuries-long plan, a one-world government, a global authority that would erase national borders and sovereign states, replacing them with a single, centralized, technocratic regime. This regime would, of course, be devoid of traditional religion, with a populace controlled through surveillance and a unified, secular belief system. The symbols of this supposed order were everywhere for those who knew how to look. On the dollar bill with its pyramid and all-seeing eye in the plans for international bodies like the League of Nations and its successor, the United Nations, the Vatican watched the push for global governance with deep suspicion, while it engaged in diplomacy at the UN and sought to influence international policy on life and family issues. The underlying fear of a superstate that could marginalize the Church entirely remained. The war was no longer just about infiltrating governments. It was about shaping the very architecture of global power in the new century. The battlefield was now the entire world, and the prize was the future of humanity itself. Would it be a future under God, or a future under a new, man-made global authority, a new world order whose invisible architects remained, as always, hidden in the shadows? The dawn of the digital age did not end the ancient war. It simply provided a new, infinitely vast and complex battlefield. The rise of the Internet, a global network of instantaneous communication and information, was a development that both sides of the shadow war could use, and one that would profoundly transform the nature of the conflict itself. The Vatican, for so long a guardian of a single authoritative truth, now faced a world where a million contradictory truths competed for attention in a digital marketplace. The heirs to the Illuminati, whether real or imagined, found in the Internet the perfect tool for the dissemination of their ideas and the perfect smokescreen for their operations. For the conspiracy-minded, the Internet became a vast library of clues. The same symbols that had been hidden in plain sight on architecture and currency were now discovered in corporate logos, music videos, and Hollywood films. The all-seeing eye was seen in the logo of a major tech company. A triangle in a pop star's performance was interpreted as a Masonic signal. This practice, known as symbol posting, created a self-reinforcing digital folklore. Online communities dedicated to unraveling the truth dissected every public event, every speech by a world leader, for hidden meanings and coded messages. They argued that the entertainment industry itself was a tool of the Illuminati, used to program the masses, to normalize occult symbolism, and to prepare humanity for the coming new world order. The war for hearts and minds was now being waged through pixels and viral videos. The Vatican, an institution built on tradition and hierarchy, faced a unique challenge. It embraced the new technology, with popes launching Twitter accounts and the Vatican creating its own multimedia portals to spread its message. Yet, it was now competing in an arena where its authority was just one voice among billions. The very concept of a centralized, hierarchical truth, the core of the Church's identity, was under assault from the decentralized, democratic, and often chaotic nature of the Internet. Furthermore, the same online forums that discussed Illuminati symbolism also buzzed with allegations of long-buried scandals within the Church. From the Inquisition to modern crises, the Church was not only fighting a shadowy external enemy, but was also having its own historical shadows illuminated by the unforgiving light of the digital world. The concept of secrecy itself was transformed. For the original Illuminati, secrecy meant encrypted letters and clandestine meetings. For the modern myth, it means data encryption, dark web forums, and the immense, opaque power of data collection. The giant technology corporations, with their ability to track global populations, influence elections, and shape public discourse, became the new faceless, powerful entities upon which conspiracy theories could be projected. Were they simply businesses, or were they the operational arm of the technocratic Illuminati, building the infrastructure for the global control system they had always planned? In this new digital labyrinth, the lines between hunter and hunted, between exposer and conspirator, became hopelessly blurred. A person could spend a lifetime tracing connections, finding patterns, and building a seemingly coherent narrative of a shadow war, all from the glow of their computer screen. The war was no longer just in the physical world of Vatican diplomacy and secret society meetings. It was now a war of narratives, fought in the collective mind of the global population, a battle where facts were malleable, evidence was ambiguous, and belief was the ultimate weapon. The physical throne of St. Peter and the mythical hidden hand of the Illuminati were now locked in a struggle for the most valuable territory of all: human consciousness in the 21st century. As we reach the present moment, the war in the shadows appears more complex and more diffuse than ever before. It has no front line, no definitive roster of combatants, and no clear set of objectives that can be universally agreed upon. To ask who is winning is to miss the fundamental nature of this conflict, for it is not a war that can be won in any conventional sense. It is, rather, an endless reflection of a fundamental and perpetual tension within the human condition itself. The struggle between the Vatican and the Illuminati is a grand historical metaphor for the eternal battle between two powerful, often opposing, human impulses: the yearning for transcendent, revealed truth, and the drive for emancipated, human-centric reason. The Vatican represents the first impulse. It is the guardian of a truth that comes from outside of humanity, a divine revelation that offers a fixed moral compass, an anchor in the chaotic seas of time. Its strength lies in its continuity, its tradition, and its offer of ultimate meaning and redemption. It provides a community, a history, and a sense of sacred order that has comforted and guided billions for 2,000 years. In a world of rapid change and moral relativism, its unwavering doctrines can be a source of profound stability. Its vision is vertical. It connects the earthly to the heavenly, the temporal to the eternal. The spectre of the Illuminati, in all its evolving forms, represents the second impulse. It is the embodiment of the belief that humanity must dare to know, that it must have the courage to use its own reason to break free from the shackles of superstition and unexamined authority. Its power lies in the promise of progress, of liberation, and of the potential for humanity to become the master of its own destiny, to create its own heaven here on earth, through science, technology, and secular ethics. Its vision is horizontal. It seeks to unite humanity under a common banner of shared reason and worldly well-being, to build a future without the divisions of dogma. This is why the war is endless. It is a dialectic woven into the fabric of our civilization. Every major leap forward in science, every social revolution, every new philosophy that elevates human reason is seen by one side as a step toward enlightenment, and by the other as a step away from divine order. Every assertion of religious authority is seen by one side as a necessary guide, and by the other as an oppressive chain. The Church condemned Galileo, and in doing so, it was defending a divinely ordered universe against what it saw as a dangerous, destabilizing idea. The Illuminati sought to dismantle the Church, and in doing so, they were attacking what they saw as the primary obstacle to human freedom and intellectual progress. The symbols and the secret societies are merely the vessels for this deeper conflict. The all-seeing eye on the pyramid is not merely a Masonic symbol. It is a representation of the enlightened mind, the human reason that sees and understands all, aspiring to build a new order. The cross is not merely a religious icon. It is a representation of a sacrifice from God, a truth that descends from above, offering salvation that human reason cannot achieve on its own. In our modern world, this war is fought in every debate about the role of religion in public life, in every ethical dilemma posed by new technologies, in every clash between individual liberty and communal tradition. The battlefield is the university, the parliament, the laboratory, and the digital public square. The Vatican continues its mission, adapting to the modern world while holding fast to its core truths, a beacon of permanence in an age of flux. The spirit of the Illuminati lives on in every secular humanist organization, in every tech visionary who believes data can solve our problems, in every political movement that seeks to build a new world upon the ruins of the old. And so, the war in the shadows continues, not because a secret cabal meets in a hidden room, but because the human heart itself is the arena where this struggle takes place. We all contain, in some measure, both the faithful seeker who longs for a truth beyond themselves, and the enlightened skeptic who trusts only in the power of their own mind. The story of the Vatican and the Illuminati is, therefore, our own story. It is the eternal, unresolvable, and necessary tension that drives history forward. A silent war whose battles are fought in the choices we make, the things we choose to believe, and the future we dare to imagine for ourselves and for all of humanity. The shadows are long, and the war is quiet, but it is a war that defines us, a war without end. And so we find ourselves here, at the end of our long journey through the corridors of history and the labyrinths of the mind. We have traversed centuries, from the sun-baked stones of ancient Rome to the glowing screens of the digital age. We have witnessed the rise of a spiritual empire and the birth of a philosophy that sought to challenge its very foundation. We have seen secret orders form and shatter, their fragments taking root in the fertile soil of fear and imagination. We have observed a war fought not with swords, but with symbols, not with armies, but with ideas. It is a war that has no official beginning, and as we have come to understand, it can have no definitive end. For you, the listener, drifting in the quiet space between wakefulness and sleep, this endless war can now recede into the realm of dream and abstraction. The great forces we have discussed, the steadfast Vatican and the elusive Illuminati, but vast, slow-moving currents in the deep ocean of human history. Their struggle is a backdrop, a perpetual motion that hums beneath the surface of our daily lives. The weight of this ancient conflict, with all its complexities and conspiracies, does not need to be yours to carry. The arguments between faith and reason, between tradition and progress, have echoed for millennia, and they will continue to echo long after our time. Let the images we have painted soften now in your mind. Let the imposing dome of St. Peter's Basilica become a gentle silhouette against a twilight sky. Let the intricate symbols of the all-seeing eye and the pyramid blur into mere patterns, like the shifting shapes seen behind closed eyelids. The whispered plans in candlelit rooms, the solemn decrees from papal chambers, the secret writings, and the public condemnations, let them all fade into a distant, murmuring echo, a story told so many times it has become a part of the atmosphere, a background noise to the universe itself. There is a peace in accepting the mystery. There is a comfort in recognizing that some patterns are too large for any one person to decipher, that some stories are too long for any one lifetime to fully comprehend. The war in the shadows will continue its silent, slow dance, but you are not a soldier in that war. You are a witness, a dreamer, a soul passing through the long, intricate tapestry of time. So release the need to find the final answer. Let go of the search for the hidden hand or the ultimate truth. The greatest secret, perhaps, is that there is no secret grand enough to explain the beautiful, terrible, and magnificent complexity of human existence. We are all part of the story, and our rest, our peace, is as important to the narrative as any battle or conspiracy. As sleep draws near, let the eternal war become a lullaby. Let the rise and fall of empires become the rhythm of your breath. Let the whispers of history become a gentle wind, soothing and distant. The shadows are deep, but they hold no power over you here. The world is old, and its struggles are long, but in this moment there is only quiet, there is only stillness. There is only the gentle, merciful release into a dreamless, untroubled sleep, far away from the war in the shadows. And so, we arrive not at a new beginning, but at a place of quiet understanding. The story has been told, the threads of history and myth have been woven together into a tapestry so vast it can no longer be seen. In its entirety, only felt as a presence, a weight in the air around us. The war in the shadows has been revealed for what it truly is, a fundamental rhythm of human history, a perpetual dance of opposing forces that gives shape to our civilization. It is the tension on the string that creates the note, the push and pull that keeps the world in motion. In the silence that follows the tale, there is a profound peace to be found. The great questions that have driven this centuries-long conflict, the question of where ultimate authority lies, the question of whether our destiny is written by a divine hand or by our own, these do not need to be answered by you in this moment. They are the questions that have fueled philosophers and saints, revolutionaries and visionaries. They are the engines of history. But for the individual soul, weary from the chase, there can be a ceasefire. The battle for the soul of the world can continue its slow, geologic pace without your participation. Imagine the two great forces, not as combatants, but as two deep, resonant tones being played on some immense, cosmic instrument. One is the steady, unwavering tone of faith, a hum that has persisted for millennia. The other is the dynamic, evolving melody of reason, constantly changing its tune. Together, they create a chord, sometimes dissonant, sometimes harmonious, but always complex and rich with meaning. You are not the player of this instrument, nor are you a note in its composition. You are a listener, appreciating the music from a distance, allowing it to wash over you without the need to analyze its every key. Release the symbols. Let the all-seeing eye become simply a shape. Let the cross be a memory of an old story. Let the pyramids be mere ancient stones. The codes and the ciphers, the hidden messages and the secret plots, let them all dissolve like mist in the morning sun. They have served their purpose in the narrative, but the narrative is now complete. What remains is the essence, the simple truth that humanity is a creature of both spirit and intellect, and the interplay between these two aspects of our nature is the great, unending story. There is no more to search for. There is no hidden truth lurking in the next paragraph, no final revelation waiting to be uncovered. This is the end of the path. The map is complete. You have reached the edge of the known world, and what lies beyond is not another clue, but a vast and quiet ocean of stillness. So, let this final word be a gentle closing of a very heavy book. The cover is shut. The light is dim. The war in the shadows is over, because you have chosen to step out of the theater and into the calm, star-filled night. There is no more to do. There is no more to know. There is only the deep, dark, and beautiful silence, and the permission to surrender to it completely. Sleep now, and dream of peaceful, untroubled things. The story is done. And so, we have traveled beyond the story itself, into the quiet realm that exists after all tales are told. The echoes have faded completely, leaving behind a silence that is not empty, but full a silence of completion, of understanding, of release. The great war of ideologies, the clash of empires seen and unseen, has been resolved not on a battlefield, but in the quiet acceptance of the human heart. It is a resolution that asks for nothing, that demands no further action, that requires no more vigilance. Let this final silence be a balm for your spirit. Let it soothe the part of your mind that has journeyed through centuries, that has wrestled with grand conspiracies and profound truths. That part of you can now stand down. Its duty is done. The need to decipher, to connect, to uncover, can gently dissolve, like a sigh of relief at the end of a very long day. There are no more secrets to be found here, no more layers to peel back. The ultimate mystery is that there is no mystery grand enough to trouble your rest. Imagine the entire history we have explored: the rise of the Vatican, the birth of the Illuminati, the centuries of shadow play, growing small and distant, like a city viewed from a high mountain at night. Its lights twinkle, a beautiful, intricate pattern, but its noise cannot reach you here. The worries of that world, the struggles for power and meaning, are now like the faint, rhythmic crash of waves on a shore far, far away, a constant, soothing rhythm that lulls rather than alarms. This is the peace that lies beyond the end of all stories. It is a gift offered to you now. The narrative is not paused. It is complete. The book is not merely closed. It is back upon the shelf, its weight no longer in your hands. You are free. Free from the burden of history. Free from the pull of conspiracy. Free from the need to know. There is only this moment. There is only the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breath, the quiet darkness behind your eyelids, the profound and merciful absence of all thought and all quest. The war is over. The search has ended. The story has spoken its final word, and that word is sleep.